Good evening, everyone. I was just about to turn off my phone and encourage the audience to do that. So, virtual audience, not a problem for you. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, on a Monday night. It's cooled off, hasn't it? Turned into a really nice evening. I was slightly worried. So, Steve, who lives in Northern Ireland, got a chance to have an alfresco dinner in early February, early April.
Early April, it was delicious as well and lovely, and you could sit out and you didn't die. It was great.
I know. I told them that your last visit in August has clearly marked you because you've only mentioned it to me about 8 times.
Yes, I'm still scarred from that, but I had a good time.
What, you wandered around Scottsdale today?
I did. It's beautiful here, as I didn't get a chance the last time I was here. It's a gorgeous city. It's so lovely and so welcoming. There's a real sense of community here as well.
Good.
I think that's all down to you, Barbara, and the store.
Well, not just to me, but the whole staff.
Yeah,
We have an
of
excellent
course.
staff, right?
Oh, I know.
I
Amazing
know.
stuff.
Well, anyway, thank you for your kind words. So last time I saw Steve was last June at Capital Crimes in London, which is a mystery conference put on by Goldsboro Books, right?
Goldsboro Books, David Headley, yes.
Yep. And we've been partners with Goldsboro Books for many years, which is where a lot of our signed UK editions from. Hopefully, the tariffs will not disrupt the flow of British books into the United States temporarily. They seem to be okay. But I don't know if any of you read about some of the places that have been hit by tariffs, like 3 islands that only have penguins, and Saint Pierre and Miquelon, which I truly love. Which I've been to off the shore of Canada,
Wow.
and it was where Joe Kennedy made all of his money because during Prohibition, since Saint Pierre and Miquelon are part of France, Canada was able to sell liquor to Saint Pierre and Miquelon, and Joe would send ships up from Boston and run them down to the United States.
Amazing. I didn't know that at all.
And the reason that I know that is that this is an island, this is a total digression, but it's fun. There's an island with no trees. And there are wooden buildings everywhere. So inquiring minds said, how come there are all these wooden buildings on an island that has no trees? And the answer is the liquor crates. Because what they would do is they'd all come in these giant wooden crates, and then they would break them up in order to put them on Joe's boats, and then they'd leave the wood behind. And so the locals decided to use it and build their houses.
Amazing. I
I
didn't
know,
know.
isn't it great?
I think all the houses may be slightly off kilter,
Travel
leaning
really
to one
broadens it.
side.
I know. It's so great. It's amazing the things that you can learn. Right. So I think a question we might start out with is why is a nice guy like you who lives in Belfast and other parts of Northern Ireland writing about a guy who's a kind of a noir character in New York City?
Oh, that's good. Good question. Well, I love American crime fiction. I was always a good reader growing up. Loved fantasy books. Lord of the Rings was the first book that really grabbed me, and I loved, and I still love it. Still, probably my favorite book.
Yeah, but then you'd be writing about New Zealand.
Yeah, well, and not at that time. It was Middle Earth. They hadn't been made in the movies then. But I loved that. I love fantasy stuff, and but it wasn't until my mum gave me a copy of Silence of the Lambs when I was about 11 or 12 that.
Gave it to you. You were that age?
Yeah, because I lived in Belfast. Silence of the Lambs is like light relief.
Okay.
The troubles were full on flow at that time. So no, I loved it, and that started me on reading American crime fiction, which I've read all my life. And when it came time for me to write a book or try to write a book, I wanted to write about a lawyer and write about how the justice system really works. And I thought if I set it in the UK, we have a dual system of representation. We've solicitors and barristers, and the barristers wear funny wigs and weird cloaks. So I thought if I set it in America, I won't need to create 2 characters, one of them slightly strange who wears a wig. I can just set it as an attorney in New York. And I've got away with it, I think.
Rumpole of the Bailey didn't actually mark
Yes,
you?
it did. I love the Rumpole books, but they're comedies, really. They're so funny. And I wanted to write a tense, gripping thriller. And you can't do that if your main character might get their cloak caught on the banisters when they're going down the stairs. That wouldn't really work for me. So it suited the type of book that I wanted to write. And the New York City suited the pace of the books as well.
Eddie Flynn is a great character. You've had amazing success in terms of not just sales, but nominations for your books. And I thought it was great that you won the Gold Dagger. For those of you who don't know, in America, the Mystery Writers of America give you horrible little statues of Edgar Allan Poe, but I mean they're really creepy. but the award is called the Edgar, and it's like the pinnacle of American crime in the sense that um, it's authors, not fans, who decide who wins the Edgars. If you go to fan conventions, it's just a popular vote, right? So the Gold Dagger system is what the British Crime Writers Association uses, and the Gold Dagger is their Edgar.
Yeah, that's their Edgar. There's a Gold Dagger for Crime Novel of the Year, and then there's Ian Fleming Dagger for Thriller of the Year, Steel Dagger. Steel Dagger, and there's all sorts of daggers now. So
more every day.
More every day, yeah. They're using new daggers all the time, which is great to see. It's great to see the whole spectrum of the genre being honoured. But yes, I was very lucky to win the Gold Dagger. If you search online, you can find me winning the award on video, because Ali Karim, who's a fantastic exponent of the genre and champion of the genre, videoed it, and I was not expecting to win, put it that way. So it was a total shock to me.
Why do you say you were lucky? It's about excellence.
Well, yes, but I sort of think
you don't want to say I was so excellent I won the Gold Dagger.
No, but and I was up. The other authors nominated with me were Abir Mukherjee and Mick Herron, who are both more talented than me and friends, and Dennis Lehane and Annika Locke. So I thought I've no chance. So
you beat Dennis Lehane. That's impressive.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't beat him in a fight. He's a tough boss, an Irish guy, and I like him very much. But so yeah, I was lucky. I think there's a good deal of luck involved in any success. And
was it an Eddie Flynn book? Because you've written 2 books that are not Eddie Flynn.
Yeah, no, this was an Eddie Flynn book.
Okay. So the British accepted the idea that you from Northern Ireland wrote a book set in New York about an American attorney, and that was okay to win an English award.
Yes, absolutely. I've been nominated for the Barry 3 or 4 times.
Which is an American award.
American award.
Yeah, and it's more of a fan. Well, it's kind of both.
It's kind of fans and readers.
For the Barry for a long time.
Yeah.
Until, I mean, no offense to you here, until I discovered that one of the judges never read any of the books, and I thought, why are we having a committee of judges which somebody hasn't actually read any of the books they are judging?
But he was very handsomely paid, I'm sure.
It was all a labor of love. Right, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So we are on what, book 10? Is this
book 10? Yes.
Witness 8. And I love the sort of tagline that his publisher put out, is that this is a book where the witness to a murder is more twisted than the killer, which is actually true when you read it. Has anybody read it? Have you read it? Yeah? Oh, okay. So we have to be a little bit careful about what we say. But it's absolutely true, and yet we don't know that when the whole book starts out. This is a masterpiece of slow reveal.
Slow reveal. Thank you very much, Barbara. It's I get sort of very general ideas about books. I'll ask myself what's the worst thing that can happen in various situations, and I wondered, well, who would be the worst person to witness a murder? Who would be the worst witness you could have? And I came up with the idea of a young girl who grew up in a very affluent area of Manhattan. And she lived there all her life. She no longer lives there, but she knows all the neighbours, and she still works there as a nanny and a maid to the families that she grew up with. And one night she's going home, and she witnesses one of the neighbours being murdered, and she knows who the neighbour is, and she knows who the killer is. But I don't bury the lead in this book. The first line of the book is, "There's something wrong with Ruby Johnson." So I let you in very early that Ruby is a very disturbed individual. And Ruby makes an anonymous call to the police and names a completely innocent man as the killer. And Eddie has to defend him. But you don't know why she's done this. And as you say, then there's a slow reveal. You learn more about Ruby. You learn about how deeply disturbed she is. And she has a definite game plan, but you don't really know what it is or why she's doing it. And
Let's not tell
propels
them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, thank you.
We're not going to tell
No,
them.
we're not going to
No,
say.
we're
No.
not going to do that.
We
But
want you to buy the book.
let's talk a little bit about the guy that she sets up, because we know that that's true from early on in the book, and the devastation that this causes him personally, but also his family, because it's not just one person that is racked by this kind of thing, but wife, kids, his job. He said, what? He's a surgeon.
He's a surgeon, yeah, so he gets suspended from work.
Right, because they don't want people operating that might be criminally minded. It would be all too easy to kill somebody on the operating table, and nobody would even call it murder, right?
Yeah, so it looks in that aspect of the devastating, circumstances and personal fallout that happens. And, it's not only through his work, he's ostracized then from the community that he's been in, and his wife is put through hell as well. So I thought it would be a good idea to look at that. So just pointing the finger at someone can be an incredibly difficult thing to do, but the fallout for that for him, I think I had to show exactly the devastation that happened to him. So you're rooting for him and you want him to be Ellie to save him at the end of the day. It's important that you feel for him, so you're invested in the story, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's also interesting that you captured the idea, because you don't live there, at least not full time, that New York City, while it's absolutely enormous, is actually a series of very small communities. And this is like, what, 2 blocks or a street in New York, but it's like living in a gated community in North Scottsdale. And, the neighbors all know each other. They only socialize with each other. They're all pretty homogenous in terms of income, social class, the whole bit. And that's true of New York, that you can have these, enclaves all over.
Yeah.
Even though we think of it as this gigantic melting pot, it actually is a series of very small communities.
It is, yeah. I mean, I know people in New York who, especially people who work in the city, they'll usually live in another part of the city, and they'll only know the area where they live and the area where they work and nothing else, and they never go anywhere else. So they live their lives within like a 10-block radius, which is great.
Dropping out to Long Island in the summer,
in the summer,
to the Hamptons or
To the
something. But
Hamptons.
again, it's the same people. It's the same kind of, they work and play together.
Yeah. So it was fascinating to write about a little community in that area of New York, because it's a different take on New York, and it shows a different side to the city, because it's a city of contrasts. You'll be walking along one street, and there'll be $10 million worth of cars parked in that street, and you'll cross one street over and you'll see the most horrendous poverty. So it's a very interesting city to write about. It gives me lots of good ideas.
Right. We're doing an event on May 28th with an author called Chris Pavone, who won the Edgar for his first novel, and he's written international spy thrillers. His new book, called The Doorman, is set on Fifth Avenue in New York, and it's not just a street, it's a building.
Yeah.
The small community is the building, and what happens there, so it's even more encapsulated than your New York.
Sounds like Only Murders in the Building
Well,
kind of thing.
actually,
I'm sure it's
actually,
very different.
To a
but
great degree it is, and I'm pretty sure that the building, which I can't remember what he calls it, but I'm pretty sure it's the Dakota.
wow.
It almost has to be an iconic building on the, Central Parkway.
Yes.
Would almost surely be the Dakota. But Chris, who lives in New York, absolutely, nails what it's like, just this whole little community. And I mean, we had a co-op at 57th and Park, our family thing, and we sold it when my husband's mother died. But I can still remember when I was staying there, and I was in a real hurry one day, and I wanted to change the sheets before we left. And I didn't find the service elevator because I didn't actually know where it was. So I'm in the elevator, the regular elevator, embracing my laundry. And I'm telling you, I got glares. The doorman yelled at me, the whole bit. I mean, so there's a huge protocol for living in a building like that, that if you don't know the rules, can lead you to. I mean, the whole co-op system in New York is an insane way to
Yes.
manage real estate anyway. But I that's the only time that ever happened to me. And I realized they thought I was. I'm sure they thought I was the maid. Why was I the maid with laundry in the elevator for the residents? Oh, whatever.
Crazy.
So yeah, it was. So Eddie Flynn, a really interesting character. Talk to us about the creation of why did you want to write about a lawyer? Let's talk about that. What's your own background?
Well, I was a lawyer.
I knew it.
yeah.
Another lawyer.
Another lawyer.
Yeah. Publisher practice is the mantra of us lawyers, right?
Yes.
I have a bookstore. You're an author.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
I was a civil rights and criminal lawyer for about 20 years, and I enjoyed it very much. And I started writing at night, my first book, and I retired from the law 2019. So I'm just writing full time now. But I got the idea one day. I was cross-examining someone, and I sort of conned them into revealing that they were lying. And the idea occurred to me then that con artists and trial lawyers have all the same skills.
That's absolutely true. And another truth, which we could acknowledge right here, is in court, because I too did a lot of trials, the best story wins. It can often triumph over any forensic evidence or anything. If you are a really great storyteller as a defense attorney, you can get some remarkable results.
Exactly. And it's not only telling your own story in convincing way, it's being able to rip apart your opponent's story and say, well, that doesn't work, and here's why. So it does help hone the storytelling skills.
It really does, right. So you came to writing with a decent background. You had lots of story ideas and lots of practice writing.
Yeah. And
dealing with liars.
I'm dealing yes. Exactly. So I was ideally placed to go into writing, but I wrote my first book and really enjoyed this character, and I thought this could be a series. And I wanted to see if there were more stories.
So
for
how
him.
hard was it to get published as a brand new author? What did you do?
I spent about a year writing the book, and it took a long time to get an agent. It took about a year to get an agent, and when I did get an agent, then we worked on the book a little bit, and I was lucky enough that the first 3 books sold at auction. I had a 3-book deal right out of the bag. So I was very lucky that way. I know, in the UK at least, and then it filtered out all over the world. So I've had a lucky start, and the books built up slowly. So the first few books sold very little in the UK. It wasn't until my 4th book, which is a book after The Gold Dagger, my 4th book, I wrote a book called 13.
Right.
About a serial killer on a jury, and that took off.
Yeah, it really did. It was a great concept. But Ian Rankin was sort of the same journey until he won the Gold Dagger with, what was it, something blue?
Oh yes, Black
and Blue, right. Ian's one of my oldest friends, and I absolutely love talking. But we had dinner in London. In fact, one of the reasons I went to London is so we could have dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a friend of Ian's.
I am, yes. I remember we were sitting together at Capital Crime.
Yeah.
Ian's a fantastic writer.
But it was the same thing. He had a very slow start. In fact, he wrote books under another name, which was Jack Harvey.
That's right.
And when he came to the U.S. the first time, people tested me at BoucherCon. They said, there's somebody here, you won't have any idea who it was. I said, oh, look, it's Jack Harvey, Ian Rankin. And they all went, how did you know that? Diana Gabaldon used to buy his weird Scottish books when she was researching Outlander. So I used to order Jack Harvey books from the UK to come here.
Wow, for Diana Gabaldon?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So that's how I knew Ian. But that's when he was not Ian Rankin yet.
Yeah.
He was all
Yes.
along, but he was hiding as Jack.
He wasn't
as
Sir
Jack
Ian
Harvey.
Rankin yet.
Right. No. Anyway, but he really didn't take off until he won the Gold Dagger as well. So that seems to be a pretty impressive mechanism for reaching more readers, just to win a major award like that.
I don't know if that helped or not. I think it did help a bit.
Of course it helped.
I think it certainly helped the publisher. I think it was the tagline and the cover that really helped sell that book, 13.
Yeah, but when you win an award like that, you get library sales, you get all kinds
You
of
do,
things.
yeah. You get more territories and stuff. So it definitely helped. As I said, I was lucky. and we
Okay,
got a
so
good
let's go
start.
back to Eddie. We've kind of lost Eddie. I keep
Yes,
going into the weeds here, but you know what? It's hard to talk for an hour about a book that you can't actually discuss
can't talk a lot
other
about.
than the opening line. So that's why we digress a lot. But so Eddie, you decided to write. I like your reasoning there. You wanted to write about an attorney. You wanted to write an American one, so he didn't have to be
Yeah,
either a solicitor or a barrister. Do you
yeah,
all know how the English system works? You can't be both.
yeah. Although I kind of was both. I
Yeah,
was a
but it's
solicitor advocate, but I
it's
couldn't
really
do
hard.
murder trials. That's the only thing you're not allowed to do. You can do everything else, but you can't do a murder trial.
Oh, is it just the murder?
Yeah, you can't do. Yeah, you can't do those. You have to
Okay,
have a
so
leader for that.
right. So barristers are called to the bar, and solicitors instruct barristers. I mean, it's a whole different thing. Whereas American lawyers can do anything
Yes.
essentially. You can do conveyancing, you can do wills and divorces, you can do, you know, criminal trials, depending on which way you want to go, prosecutor or defense. You know,
Yeah, we've two professions then who aren't great at anything. So yeah, no, it's a very different system. And again, as you mentioned, the John Mortimer books really puncture that whole pomposity of the
Mhm.
bar and the solicitors
That
much
was a
better
great
than I
TV
could.
series too.
I love the TV series, and
Right.
Leo McKern was perfect
Yes, he
casting for
was.
Rumpole, and he became Rumpole in John Mortimer's eyes. And he wrote Rumpole slightly differently to McKern's voice after it. But yeah, no, I love the TV series. My son is actually reading the Rumpole
Oh yeah.
books at the moment. Yeah, starting them on there. They won't be watching now because they'll be in bed, but they may tune in later.
It's only
Um,
8 hours difference. Come on. So
And
no,
it's actually it was only
it's a
4 o'clock
long
in the
thing.
morning.
I know. I really impressed a publicist today who asked me if I would do the book launch for an Australian author, and effortlessly I said to her, 5 o'clock here, July 1st, will be 10 a.m. July 2nd for him. Just let him know that we're going to do it for coffee. She said, how did you know that? And the truth is that during COVID, since we went all over the world with Zoom, I have memorized time zones and hours literally everywhere.
Wow.
You know, it's 9 hours to Stockholm.
I
It's the next day plus, you know, I mean, once you learn it, it's made, but very few people can work out Arizona. I have to constantly explain to people, we stay on Mountain Standard Time, but for everybody else, the equivalent, if you're not in Arizona, is Pacific Daylight Time. So if you're in New York, you know, you want to think of us as on California time. But Facebook insists on saying everything is MST. So
All right.
every event we do, I get frantic emails from publicists saying, I thought you said it was 5 o'clock or whatever, you know, I'm
Yeah.
going. So apparently time zones are one of the hardest things to conceptualize.
Yeah, I don't even, not even entirely sure what time it is now because I've been on tour for a week. I've been in multiple different time zones and a different one tomorrow.
7:20.
7:20. There we go.
Right.
That helps.
Okay.
But yeah, but Eddie's a lot of fun to write. He's inspired a little bit by Clarence Darrow.
Is he?
Yeah, the
You're
great
too young to have
great
ever
trial lawyer.
actually seen Clarence Darrow. Even I might be too young for that.
You are too young for that. Yeah, no, Darrow was. Well, there's been movies and books and everything
Right.
written about him, and he's a fascinating character. So he started off as a railroad workers lawyer. He represented railroad workers.
Was he in Montana?
He was all over.
Because C.J. Box wrote a really brilliant book a couple of books ago about how unions started in Montana, and there were all kinds of legal fights. Did you all know that the American labor movement actually started in Butte, Montana, in the copper
I
mines?
have to say, I did not know that.
Okay, well, that's why you read crime fiction,
That's
right?
exactly
Learn all
it.
this great stuff. But so I wondered because there was a lot of legal wrangling in some of
No,
those
he was
books.
mostly in the South.
Okay.
But he represented a lot of railroad workers who were hurt or injured.
Okay. So
you know,
personal
working
injury
railroad.
work,
Personal
essentially.
injury work, and a little bit of you know, time management and slight union type work, but maybe before the unions were formed. But he couldn't do that anymore because someone who worked for him was caught bribing a juror.
Ooh.
They were walking into the jury room with a bag full of money. So Darrow had to step away from that, and instead he did murder trials. So Darrow scholars differ slightly, but they say he did maybe over 100 murder trials, capital murder trials, and he lost about 4. And he was a fantastic lawyer and an amazing orator, but he also cheated. So one of Clarence's things he would do is on the day when the prosecutor are going to call their star witness, Darrow, he mostly wore black suits and white shirts. That day, he would wear a beautiful, pristine white linen suit. And he would go into court and he would sit at the defense table beside his client. And the only thing he had in front of him was a big glass crystal ashtray, like the size of, not the size of this table, but half the size of this table. And that was all that was on the defense table. He never wrote anything down, never carried any papers. He just had that sort of photographic memory. So the witness was called. They started to give their testimony. And Clarence lit a huge foot-long Cuban cigar and started smoking. Now, what no one knew is, before he went into court, he threaded a lady's hat pin through the center of the cigar. So, as the testimony got worse and worse, more damning against his client, the ash in the cigar got longer and longer and longer.
Totally distracting
and
the jury.
Totally distracting. He's lying back like this with a cigar just precariously perched over this gorgeous suit, never tipped the ash into the ashtray. And the whole jury are just nudging each other going, that's going to fall in his suit. Any moment. They're not listening to a word of testimony in the trial.
Well, as I said, the best story wins.
The best story wins.
Or the best storyteller, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Eddie, well, he is a con man turned lawyer, but how did that happen? I mean, why did he change?
He changed. I sort of deal with this in the first book. I write the books because in a way that you don't have to read them in order. You can pick up the 8th book as your first book, and you'll have the same experiences. Most of my readers have read the books out of order. Very few people have started from book 1. So what normally happens is someone picks up book 7 or book 8 or book 5, and then reads them, just picks and choose. But his origin story is sort of in the defense, where he was a con man and his mother was sick and was dying, and he sort of promised her he would go straight because his father was a con artist and he learnt a lot of con tricks from his father, and his mother wanted him to be better. So he promised her he was going to be a lawyer, and he was involved in a con that got him into court one day, and he met Judge Harry Ford, who sort of took him under his wing. Because Eddie was representing himself in that case. And Harry said, this kid has got a bit of something about him. He could be a lawyer. And that's how Eddie's life changed.
So who, in general, are his clients?
He will only represent people he believes are innocent. Or people who have not done anything very badly wrong, but have somehow fallen afoul of the law. He won't put anyone dangerous back on the street. And that kind of echoes what I did as a lawyer. In the firm I worked in, we did criminal law, but if there was anyone who was truly dangerous and wanted us to defend them, and we knew that they were guilty, we politely declined because we wanted to be able to sleep at night. And that's an unusual way to practice law. Maybe not the most lucrative way, but it was the way that we did it. And I've given those sentiments to Eddie because he did once represent someone that he wasn't sure, and that person did do something bad, and Eddie's sort of been paying that back. He's been sort of searching for redemption ever since from that incident.
Okay, so when the doctor, who's been set up for this crime, approaches Eddie, sorry, it's a fly, what test does Eddie use to determine whether the doctor is innocent or not?
Well,
and is it a group decision or just Eddie?
Well, it can be a group decision in some books, but mostly Eddie has a very fine lie detector inbuilt because of his father, who was a world heavyweight champion liar, and his mother, who was a world heavyweight champion lie detector. So he has that ability normally to detect when someone is lying to him, and he has to believe in the person before they go forward. And again, sometimes, most of the times, Eddie gets it right, but we can never be entirely sure.
Okay, but the reader can make sort of a bet
The reader can make.
Eddie is defending. It's like Earl Stanley Gardner. Did Perry Mason ever have a guilty client? Does anybody know?
I don't think he ever did.
I don't think so. I think I mean, his courtroom shenanigans were, just so off the chart and
they
impossible. I know.
But I love those books. They were great, and there was like 120 of them.
There's a lot.
He wrote I think he wrote like 3 books a month or something.
Yeah, it was sort of like Pulp Fiction, but legal Pulp Fiction. And
Legal
then
Pulp
Raymond
Fiction.
Burr was particularly good cast, in the TV thing
Yeah.
too, which I thought was a lot of fun as well. But you sort of knew when you opened the book or watched the TV
Yes.
that somehow the client, even if it was like at the 11th hour and 59 minutes, was somehow or other going to be saved.
Well, exactly. But sometimes and you're rooting for Eddie to save the person. Sometimes you're not so sure. So one of my backlist books is coming out in June in paperback. It's called 50/50. And that book starts off with a 911 call. This woman called Alexandra calls the police and says, "Oh my God, I've just found my father. He's been murdered. My sister Sophia killed him. I think she's still in the house. Come quick." And there's another 911 call. "My name is Sophia. I think my sister Alexandra has killed my father. I've just found him. Please get here." So the 2 sisters are accused of their father's murder. They accuse each other, and they are both put on trial. And Eddie's representing one sister, and a character called Kate Brooks from this book is representing the other sister. And the 2 points of view in the book are Eddie and Kate. And there is a third point of view in the book, which is simply known as She, which is one of the sisters who is the real killer, but you don't know which one.
Interesting story structure, right? So,
So-
in addition to that,
so-
in August,
Yes.
this is my advanced reading copy of another book called The Devil's Advocate. And what happened is that he has moved to a different publisher, and they are moving to bring his earlier books back into print, which I have to say does not happen all the time.
Yeah.
When people change publishers, very often they leave their what's called the backlist, i.e., books they published before, behind. Sometimes the new publisher doesn't want something entirely different, for them. So I think it's great that Atria, yay Atria if you're watching this.
Yay. Yay, Adrian.
Well, they watch a lot. We do a lot with Atria.
Yeah, I know. They're fantastic.
But yay for them that they are making an effort to bring all of your earlier books back.
They are. And they've been absolutely superb. And I'm not just saying that because they may be watching. They genuinely have been great.
Right. David
and
Brown,
go David and Ali and Sean. Yeah, and that's an interesting book. The Devil's Advocate is about. I wanted to write a book about the death penalty and how the death penalty really works in America. Because I find it's not motivated by religion or politics. It's entirely down to personalities, which I wasn't aware of until I really looked at it. I came across a piece of research about prosecutors, and it turns out that 5 district attorneys' offices are responsible for about 20% of the death row population, the entire death row population in the U.S. 5 lawyers.
Arizona recently put somebody to death.
Yeah, I know.
Texas, I think, still has the death penalty.
Yeah.
Isn't it Utah where you can elect firing squad?
I think
I
so.
think
Maybe
it's
that's
Utah.
Alabama as well. I think you can elect it as well. There's various. Some states you can have the electric chair. Some because there's been various difficulties with lethal injection. There isn't a humane way to do it, really. I don't think. But there were when I read about these 5 lawyers after they left office, the prosecution rate for death penalty plummeted. So they were doing, half a dozen death penalty cases a year, and when they left, they were doing 1 every 3 years or something. These people just wanted to kill people. And, for example, there was one anecdote about a district attorney's office. Whenever someone in the office had done their first death penalty conviction, they'd got their first conviction, they threw a party for that lawyer, and they were given a little gift, a paperweight in the shape of the electric chair, which they kept on their desk. And it's just chilling. So there's a really chilling villain in that book.
Do you know that Canada's award I mentioned to you, the Edgar Allan Poe for America and the Daggers for England in Canada, is called the Arthur Ellis Award, and it's the hangman. Arthur Ellis was the Canadian death penalty hangman, and the award, up until recently, was in fact a gallows.
Wow.
So
I did not know
you
that.
didn't know that? Look at all the
No.
things you've learned
I'm
tonight.
learning, so I'm glad I came here,
it's
Barbara.
Amazing. You've only been here for like 35
I even know what time it is now.
It's so impressive. No, I mean, I think Although I might be wrong that very recently they moved away from the actual hangman. But people like Kathy Reichs and so forth, who won the Arthur Ellis Award, that was the award they got.
Wow. Yeah, I used to be in the UK when you won the dagger. You got an actual dagger. And like a Owen McNamee, who's a fantastic Irish writer and a friend. When he won the steel dagger, they gave him a steel dagger, like a little one, but still a knife. And he had desperate trouble getting that home on the plane to Belfast from London.
Surprised he didn't mail it back.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can't even do that. That's an interesting question. The diamond dagger, what they do is they give you a little lapel pin if you're a guy, and they give you earrings for if you're a woman. So another thing you didn't know, right?
Again, I didn't. I'm learning so much here.
Gotta love it, right? I've been to a number of dagger ceremonies in the UK, so that's how I know that. Right. Well, all right. So maybe we should ask the audience for questions, because we really can't talk much more about this book without spoiling it.
Not a huge amount.
Not,
No.
well, so, questions. It's up to you.
Of course. Oh, yes.
So how does a guy from Belfast get the voice of a New York lawyer?
How do I get the voices as a New York lawyer from being from Belfast? I watched a lot of Starsky and Hutch growing up. And I loved American TV shows. So Hill Street Blues, I loved as well. Kojak, I just devoured American movies and TV. And that voice, I think, and you've had other Northern Irish authors like Stuart Neville, who's also written the American voice, and John Connolly as well, saying that I think the Irish ear is more attuned to an American voice than maybe an English. I think we can write it easier than maybe English authors or Scottish authors. I don't know why, but and we consume so much American books and movies and TV. So I think it was just that, and hopefully I get away with it.
I'm trying to think if there's a single Scottish author that writes an American character. Patrick, this is for you.
Patrick will know
Are
if
there
there
any?
is.
He's lurking in the back there. Are there any Scottish authors that write American characters?
Oh, there is one. There is one. A writer called Mason Cross who does it very well. But
Mason
he's
Cross?
writing under he's writing under a different name now.
Is he the one that I thought was called Brown?
No, that's
No,
Gordon. That's Gordon Brown.
Okay. Can you think of anybody else?
Oh, Denise, of course. Denise Miner wrote a Chandler.
That's true.
That's
Good
right.
point, Patrick. Thank you. I knew you'd know.
You're right. Well done.
Yeah,
Good save,
she
Patrick.
did. She wrote a really good Chandler.
Really
I
good
thought.
one, and updated the character. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Another question. I saw more hands.
Is any plans for movies out of one of your books?
At the moment, we're working on a possible TV series, and we have been for about 2 years.
Is it a British series or an American series?
American series. So we're quite far down the line. We'll see. We'll know shortly if that's going to go or not.
Well, the writer's strike, threw a huge
Writer's
wrench
strike,
in-
yeah.
So it's
Very interesting to see who will be the actor for Eddie.
Well, we have someone at the moment, but I can't tell you who it is. Who do you think would be a good Eddie Flynn?
I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it depends on the book. I put a face to Eddie, and I have changed it a couple of times. So
All right. Okay. Well, if we get this actor, I think everyone will be very happy. Yeah.
sometimes these movie things go on for so long that the person that originally everybody thought would be great ages out.
Yeah.
It's like too old to be the character now. So you have to hope that it doesn't take forever.
Let's hope.
Yep. All right. Another question.
How many books in the series do you have planned for Eddie?
Right now, Eddie's paying my mortgage. So I'm trying to think how long's left of my mortgage. Quite a bit. No, I'm going to keep going with Eddie for as long as I can. I don't age him in real time, unlike our friend Mr. Rankin and our friend Mr. Connolly. I sometimes there's only a couple of weeks or a couple of months or a couple of days in between books. It's not a year. And I've done that purposefully so I can keep him young and vibrant
Unbelievable.
and believable. You know,
Give him a dog, you have to do the same thing.
yes. Oh, Harry has a dog, so yes, we've slowed everything down. Of course, because I don't want Harry's dog to die, and I don't want him to. I don't want to fall into the difficulties that some of my writer friends have had.
Yep.
You know, where
Dogs
they
are,
reach a certain age and then they have to retire. You know,
yeah, they have to become like private eyes or something.
Private eyes, yeah.
Both, both. Wow, that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
but the other side of that coin is I don't have what Michael Connolly and Ian Rankin have, which is a history of Los Angeles and Edinburgh from the 90s right through now. If anyone did want a history of those cities, those were the books I would say go and read, because you've got everything there. So I don't have that. I don't rely on current events really. I just want so the books in some way are a little bit timeless. Sometimes there's a few mentions of current events, but mostly not.
But you also have to kind of keep up with technology too, right?
Yeah, I have to.
I mean, Sue Grafton, who I truly loved, but at one point her books became historical fiction because, the last part of the alphabet, she was still in the 1980s. And, but I mean,
Yeah,
she
you're right.
she didn't want to deal with cell phones and,
Yeah.
and other stuff. And so gradually they really did become historical.
Amazing.
Well, but I mean, I think it's a reasonable choice. It's much harder to be a private eye. In fact, private eyes today generally are really excellent at the keyboard rather than pounding the pavement.
Yeah.
Archie Goodwin would be somewhere in Wolf's townhouse, with a whole computer system. He wouldn't be out, gumshoeing around New York.
Exactly. So I do have to. So if there's mentions of social media and stuff, and TikTok and Instagram play a part in the next book, the new Eddie Flynn for next year.
Okay. Anybody? I thought I saw another hand.
Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky, but mostly I'm aiming for the next book in the series to be a standalone thing. So it's where those characters are at that time, and I don't like to hark back to lots of previous things that have happened in the books. I try to keep that out of it as much as I can, so that I don't have to have with every new book the first 50 pages. Here's all the stuff that you missed in the other books, and let's catch up so you understand what's happening. So I try to avoid that as much as I can.
You can't suddenly make Eddie like 2 feet taller or
No.
20 pounds heavier or give
No.
him red hair or whatever
Exactly. No, I can't do that. So some of the characters, I try to look at, I keep in mind the ending of the last book. So sometimes they will carry over injuries, say, for example, that they've had in the previous book. I nearly get caught out in that before, where one of the characters was badly injured. And then in the next book, which was only like a month after that, they're totally fine. I thought, oh, hang on a minute, they'd still be recovering. Let's deal with that. So it's mostly, I try to keep it in mind, but I don't have like a Bible or anything like that. I'm not at that stage yet, I don't think.
Are there any online questions, Patrick? You're right. I agree. There was a comment. Your baby's
Actually,
being
yes.
very good.
Let's see. Can you hear me okay?
Yes?
Okay. There's getting back to the dog. Do you have any pets yourself, and what kind?
I do. I have 2 dogs. I have a border terrier called Muffin, who's quite young and a bit of a terror and full of personality. And I have an older rescue dog who's called Lolly, who's about 12 now. And she has arthritis and various other complaints. And because she has arthritis, she's down on her paws a lot, and she's rubbed the calluses off her elbows. So she wears these. My wife bought her these amazing elbow pads, which go over both legs, and she has colourful ones and camouflage ones. And she always gets lots of compliments when she's out on her walk now. They think she's very stylish. So yeah.
Have you ever heard of elbow butter?
Yes, and we do
We've
have
got
that.
for our dogs.
Yep,
elbows.
we've got that. We call it vet salve in the UK. I've got that. She has those, and she has her elbow pads.
Our older rescue dog gets monthly shots. which have done
Yeah.
her lots of good in her arthritic shoulder. You know, she had one yesterday, and she was much livelier today.
Yeah. Yeah, Lolly gets a monthly shot, and she gets she's got a little condition as well. She gets daily medication. She costs me a fortune, but I love her so much.
That's why you're writing Eddie, right?
That's why I'm writing Eddie.
All right. Pay
Yeah,
for the mortgage, pay for the
The
dog.
mortgage payments pay for the dogs.
That's right. Dogs, yeah.
How about TV and film stuff? Any?
Talked about it.
Oh, did you?
No, but
Yep.
yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Missed that.
I'm working with a really great studio and brilliant writers and fantastic producers, and everyone's on board, and we have a great script, and we have someone we think would be great in the lead role. So fingers crossed.
So next time you come, we maybe can talk about it.
We I would hope
We
so.
could do that.
I would hope so.
Hey,
Touch
that'd be
wood.
Right, right. So, anybody have a final question? No, it's hard to sit in these chairs for a super long time. So, on that note, I have like 2 books to give away, and I think the mother of the baby should get the August book. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Yay!
And I want you to give it to your husband, who has made this event
He's
possible
so good.
by removing the baby. So she's been great. Thank
Yeah,
you very much for
thank
doing
you.
that. Right. You bet.
You have to read it to the baby, though. That's her bedtime. That's her bedtime book to get the fans started young.
Wow, raising a serial killer, right? All thanks to right. The other book I had to give away. Did we do tickets tonight, or did we? Okay, thank you. C.B. Everett is actually a British author called Martin Waite, who rechristened himself to write something different. And you're talking about Only Murders in the Building.
Yeah.
This is certainly one. It is 10 strangers wake up inside an old log house with no recollection of how they got there. In order to escape, they have to solve the disappearance of a young woman, but there's a killer stalking the halls of the house, and the body count rises. And I will tell you, not a spoiler, that nothing in the is true. Nothing. But it's a really interesting book. So pick a number between 1 and 7, and we'll give it away.
4.
Ah, is that you? Great. Now, we did a conversation, he and I, and Just Kid last week. So if you go to poisonpen.com and you check on Facebook or YouTube videos, you can watch me talk to this author and the other author. So it kind of makes it more fun if you know what it is, right?
Excellent.
Okay, so
Congrats.
round of applause for our author.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
And if you guys would like to fold up your chairs and move them over against that wall, not this wall, and line up and get your book signed and take photos. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you for coming, folks. Thank you, Barbara. That was really fun.